sites and on YouTube as well. So that's good. Awesome. All right, so we're just a little bit early. We've got about 4 minutes. What I'd like to do is just answer any questions that you have. Tell me where you're from. We got the Virgin Islands, awesome. Kentucky, Arkansas. That's fantastic. I'm so excited to have people from all over. This makes my morning. This is amazing. More Kentucky. Yeah, we've been getting a lot of people from Kentucky. So go ahead and tell me, which PLT you're taking, if you're taking the pre-K, elementary ed, middle or high. We're going to cover them all today, so don't worry. And let me know how things are going in your studies. We do have about 4 minutes, so I don't want to start until 10 a.m. exactly, but we are live on all of our social media sites as well. And that really helps to engage everybody. So if you are new to NavaEd, let me know. We are very much present in Florida. We've made a pretty big name for ourselves in Florida, and we're starting to move into the national exams now, which is really exciting. So let me know what you guys, how you guys are doing. And if you're new to NavaEd, if you're part of our Facebook group, we have a Facebook group that I'll show you later how to access and all of that. Looks like you're from Kentucky and you're taking the middle school. Okay. Elementary, bunch of elementary. Elementary tends to be the most because there are more elementary school teachers than any other teachers. But go ahead and let us know, talk to each other in the chat. Just a couple things to go over before I start officially. If anything happens with your internet, if my sound goes out, whatever, don't worry. I'm recording this on a camera. I'm recording it on my, on Zoom, and I'm also recording it on 2 other places. So no matter what, this replay will get to you. So don't worry about that. If you're watching live on Facebook, welcome, welcome. There are some handouts and things like that go with this, but you can gain access to that later. Don't worry too much. I'm going to be projecting everything on my screen for you today, so you don't have to really download anything, but we do have handouts that go with this presentation if you didn't go through Zoom, and we will hook that up in the details later, so don't worry about that. You can also access it on our website. If you just go to the website, there's a big banner that says PLT webinar. If you click that and you fill out the form, you'll immediately get access to the Zoom link and the handouts that go with this. And then you'll get a follow-up email. So after this is over today, those of you who registered through Zoom or through our link, you're going to get an email with the replay, the presentation, anything I discussed. You're going to get access to all of it. So don't worry about trying to write everything I say down. Just relax, enjoy the presentation. It's going to be about 45 minutes, and I'll take questions during and after, and just enjoy the show. And we'll be working on a bunch of different aspects for you to be successful on the Praxis PLT, Principles of Learning and Teaching. All right, let me check my time here. It's 10 o'clock, so let me go ahead and record. We are recording. All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Kathleen Jasper. I'm the CEO of NavaEd, and I am here to go through the Praxis Principles of Learning and Teaching with you today. This is a test that almost all teachers have to take around the United States. It is aligned to other tests that other states have to take. For example, Florida takes a test called Professional Education Test. It is very similar to this. This test outlines, different theorists in education, using objectives in your instruction, aligning your instruction to the standards, understanding the importance of assessments. So that's all of this wrapped up into one exam. So that's really, really good. And I'm going to show you ways where you can find tons of free resources. And I'm going to show you, of course, our paid resources. But just go ahead and let me know if you need anything specific in the chat. I'm going to turn off the chat while I'm presenting because I have a case of ADHD, and so I get distracted very easily. So I'm going to go ahead and close the chat now, but feel free to talk with each other and talk to each other about what you guys are doing and any questions you have, and then I'll periodically open up the chat. All right. So let me go ahead and just bring I'm going to pull this over here, and I'm going to share my screen with you. So we're talking about the PLT scoring. A lot of people will call us and ask, How many can I get wrong? I mean, that's like a general question because you guys want to know how many. My recommendation for this test is to shoot for 50 out of 70 for the multiple choice and 5 out of 8 for the constructed response. That translates to a low C on the multiple choice and a D on the constructed response. So really quickly, let me just go over the test. There are 70 selected response questions. Selected response is just a fancy word for multiple choice. And there are 4 constructed response questions for the test. 75% of the test is made up of the multiple choice. 25% of the test is made up of the constructed responses. Now I'm going to show you how to calculate your score here, but it gets really confusing because you have a mixture of multiple choice and constructed responses that are smushed together here. So really what you want to do is just focus on this goal, and this will get you a 169, which is in the safe zone. That meets every single test. Some tests, some states require a 157. Some states require a 161. It all depends on the state you're teaching in. I like to shoot for this number here. It is a little high, but it's totally attainable. And if you can shoot for this in your practice, then you know you're good to go here. Okay, so let me just erase this because I need it. Oops, should have set that up. There we go. There we go. Okay, so let's just talk about really quickly. So let's say I got a 50 out of 70 on the multiple choice. So I'm going to do the math over here. So I have 50 out of 70. That's basically a low C. So I missed 20 questions. All right. So what I want to do is find the percentage. Well, when I take 50 and divide it by 70, I get 71%. However, that is 71% of 75% of the test, because remember, the multiple choice is only 75. So how do you take 71 of 75% of the test? You multiply 71% by 75%. And I have a whole video on this that's about to be posted on YouTube. So if you get confused about this, you can always reference that later. So don't worry. So 71, so 0.71, that's 71%, times 0.75, and I get 0.53. That's what I get for that. And that equals basically 53%. Okay. Now I want to get 5 out of 8 on the constructed response. Now I'm going to go over the constructed response more in depth and how that's scored and everything. But I just want to say, let's say we got a D. Let's say we got 1, 2, and we got some other sections. We got a 1. So we got a D on the constructed response. So let's take the percentage of that. So I have 5 out of 8. That equals a 63%. But that's 63% of 25% of the test. So what do? I multiply that by 25. So 0.63 times 0.25, and I get 0.157. I'm going to go 0.16 here, all right, which is 16%. So then you take the 0.53, let me go down here, 0.53 plus 0.16, 0.53 plus 0.16, and I get 0.69. All I do is take off that decimal point and put a 1 in front of it, which equals a 169 for your scaled score. Now, I know that's confusing. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I want to get to the actual test, but I wanted to show you how it is scored. If you want to just forget the math because math is not your thing and percentages give you heartburn, no big deal. Just go for around a 50 out of 70 on the multiple choice and about a 5 out of 8 on the constructed response. Now, when we get to the constructed responses, I'll show you how that works. So don't worry too much about that. Right now, I want to focus on the multiple choice, okay? If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Let me just check real quick. Looks like everybody's fine in the chat. If you're on Facebook, I'm not able to reach that now because I'm in my presentation, but help me out for people on Facebook if anybody has questions, and I'll check that in just a little bit. All right, moving on. Let's go to the multiple choice. The first thing I want to talk about is something that I believe in wholeheartedly, that I use constantly at NavaEd, and these are the good words. And those of you who have taken our courses before know that the good words will help you with almost any scenario-based test. Now, scenario-based tests are the kinds of tests like the PLT, where we are talking about like they give you a big old fat scenario and you got to read all this stuff. And then the answer choices are like 18 paragraphs long. And so these good words will help you narrow those down. All right. So let's take a look at good words on this test. These are the words you want to be looking for in the answer choices. Now, these good words come from, let me just show you where I get them. I don't make them up. They come from, just go here, these test specifications here. The language in the test specs are in the correct answer choices on the exam. So you want to make sure you're taking a look at this when you are working through. So make sure you just understand there are good words in here that you want to be on the lookout for in the correct answer choices on the exam. All right, so let me just go out of here and go back to my presentation. All right, so first two that are the main good words you want to be focusing on are anything that is data-driven or standards aligned. Data-driven is all about using assessments to drive instruction. You're also going to want to understand your different assessments. The other thing is standards alignment. Every state wants to know that if you're a teacher, you're aligning your instruction to the state standards 100%. So some sort of standards alignment, scope and sequence, that kind of thing is really, really important. Another set of good words is differentiated instruction. Now listen, it might not say differentiated instruction, but it might say adapting instruction to meet the needs of struggling learners, okay? That is differentiated instruction. So while I've reduced these good words to just some quick buzzwords, you may need to transfer that knowledge and apply it to like a bigger sentence, right? So if you're using flexible grouping to meet the needs of all students, well, that's differentiated instruction. So just be on the lookout for those types of things. Scaffolding is another one. If you see the term scaffolding in an answer choice, I would definitely consider it as your correct answer, but it might also be like you're modifying instruction to help a struggling student meet the benchmark. That's also scaffolding. And scaffolding is a lot to do with differentiated instruction as well. Of course, we're going to have high expectations for all students, and that's code for challenging your high-level students, pushing your mid-level students to constantly move up, and challenging your low-level students who have lots of gifts and lots of things to offer, but maybe struggle in one area. So you want to help those students push on, make gains, always moving up, 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 up. Of course, reading across the content area, you'll see this in the test specs. Every teacher is a reading teacher. It's not left to just the reading department. You want to make sure if you're teaching social studies, science, any of those content areas that you're using reading in the content area, because it really helps to reinforce reading. Science and social science are fantastic ways to use reading in the content area. It's a great opportunity. So definitely be supporting the English language arts department, my social science and science teachers. I was a science teacher and we read every day in science. Of course, interdisciplinary, this one is big, especially on the Praxis exams. They want you to intermingle content areas. Now, I know you do this anyways as a elementary school teacher, right? But any teacher can do this. So if you're a high school teacher and you teach language arts, you should be integrating what the social science and the science teacher are doing. There is a way to be interdisciplinary, also called cross-curricular, integrated instruction. All of that is on the good words list, okay? Student-centered, of course, helping students to be a part of the planning of instruction. In cooperative learning, students should be part of the, not just the planning process, but they should have some accountability within their cooperative learning groups. You got to let the kids in on what's going on and allow them to facilitate instruction, activities, things like that. And then, of course, all of this should be intrinsically motivated. We want them to understand that learning is a part of, an intrinsic motivator. We want them to learn for the sake of learning, not because they get a cookie at the end of it. Now, cookies work, but not all the time. We want to make sure that they have that intrinsic motivation to learn. And we do that by making all learning student-centered. and giving them a say in what they do, student selected books, letting them choose among, 4 different activities that are aligned to the standards, letting them show mastery in different ways. All of that is intrinsic and student-centered. So these are all connected. These good words are all connected, but look for these in the correct answer choices. And I'm going to show you how to do that with test questions. I'm going to show you how it works in just a minute. All right, now another thing I like to focus on are bad words. You want to stay away from these in the answer choices. And I have a couple of example items today that have a couple of bad words in there. I'm going to show you how to eliminate those right away, okay? So first we have extrinsic rewards. Now, I know extrinsic rewards work. I use them all the time. I use them with my kid. I'm sure you use them with your kids. Allowances, money, cookies, Jolly Ranchers, extra time in the library, whatever it is, totally works. On this test, don't use it. We want to go with intrinsic rather than extrinsic. So if you see any kind of extrinsic rewards, I would be hesitant of picking that answer choice and would eliminate it. Extra homework, extra seat work, extra anything for just the sake of giving extra work is not an answer on this test. Do we use homework? 100%. But on this test, you're probably going to get questions about struggling learners, and extra homework is not going to help struggling learners. I'm not anti-homework. I think it's a good thing when it's done right. But on this test, extra homework is not going to be the answer to most of the scenario questions you get. Silent independent reading is also probably not going to be an answer on this test. If students are struggling with reading, having them read silently is probably not going to be the best situation there. Anything that is English only. When you get an ELL question, these are for your ELL or ESOL questions, you don't want to go with English only. First of all, it doesn't work. Bilingual education, based on evidence and the research, bilingual education works so much better than anything else, and English only practices actually hurt students. So just say no to English only practices on this test and in life. Remember, everything I'm telling you today, I want you to use in your classroom. So we're going to go through some constructed response questions today, and I want to make sure that you do this as a teacher, not just for the sake of this test. And then, of course, anything negative, just say no to punitive measures. I'm going to call your parents, put them on a behavior contract and, take away their privileges. Anything negative doesn't work. And I'll tell you that PBS, positive behavior support, or PBIS is sometimes called, the research points that positive behavior support works so much better than punitive measures. And so when we have career changers taking this test, so some of you have gotten a degree in education, so you understand PBS, but some of you are leaving a job. Maybe you're an accountant or you did something else before, anything. I don't know. I was a bartender before I started teaching. So I had an English degree and I was a bartender and worked in the service industry forever. And then decided to leave that and go into teaching. But I went with what I knew, right? If people act up, you send them to ISS. If people act up, you call their parents. But we know now through research and evidence that that doesn't always work. So we want to be sure that we're using positive behavior support and going with positive things in the classroom. We'll talk more about that, but if you're looking for more information on it, just Google PBS, PBIS, and there are so many videos to help you. And this will help you with behavior and classroom management. All right. But since we're talking about the test as a whole, I want to talk about a few things. Now, let's go to the first part of this, which is alignment. And this is going to have to do with, and we said alignment, standards alignment is part of the good words. So of course, we're going to be talking about standards alignment. This is going to be in your objectives. And I'm going to send you this presentation. I'm going to send it to you without writing, and I'm going to send it to you with writing. So you can see my ugly notes and handwriting if it makes you happy, or you can get it totally clean and clear. So don't worry about that. So we're talking about standards objectives. We're talking about the state standards, and we're also talking about, scope and sequence, which is right here. So I'll just put scope here. Now, the scope and sequence is usually outlined in the academic plan by your state. So definitely look at the academic plan Funny story, when I started teaching, I had no idea what alignment was. I got hired. They gave me a textbook and a pair of keys to my room, and they said, good luck. That was my induction program. And one day the assistant principal came in and she said, you're teaching to the standards, right? And I said, oh yeah, totally, teaching to the standards, 100%. I didn't even know there were standards. I had to ask somebody, and then I went and looked and realized I was not teaching to the standards. So I had to fix that. Most of you probably have a better induction program, but if you don't have an induction program, then that's okay. Figure out what the standards are and you will be able to figure that out. Just go to your state website and they'll have the standards there. Most of you are using the Common Core standards. If you're in another state, you're using your own standards. They're aligned to the Common Core. So, go ahead and look at those. Then of course, we're going to be aligned to education theory. And this is going to be like Dewey, Piaget, Bloom's. All right, that's the education theory. Now, we're not going to go through every theorist today, but they are in the specs and you can take a look at those. I'm going to just get right to the questions so you can take a look. So now let me just zoom in here. I'm going to give you a second to do this. This is from the ETS. I should have typed this in here. Let me just go back up here. This is from the ETS. I want to cite it so you know this is not a Nava Ed. You did get study questions from us in your handout. We are going to talk about those. I'm actually going to use the constructed response, but I wanted to go through the ETS questions so you can see exactly what they're doing here. So I'm going to give you a second to take a look at this. I want you to do, first thing I want you to do not start here. Start here in the answer choices. Look for those good words. Try to eliminate bad words and see what we can figure out here. Now, you won't always be able to eliminate everything, but start with the answer choices. Notice I got a bad word glaring at me right there in B. So go ahead and eliminate, and you guys tell me, eliminate the bad answer choices, look for the good words, and then read the question, and then we'll discuss. I'm going to check the chat really quickly here while you guys are doing that. Let me know what you guys think. Go ahead and tell me what do you think the answer is to this question? Good, guys. All right, it's coming in. Now, if I were doing this, and remember, I am the person who analyzes. Hang on, let me. Now, if I were doing this question, I am the person who analyzes test questions all the time. So I'm going to go straight to the answer choices, and I'm immediately going to eliminate B because extra homework is not going to be my answer. I have A, plan for, teach, and enforce routines, transition times, and housekeeping. I like this plan for because those are the routines and the procedures. So I'm going to keep that. Let's go with C, assign individual reading on new, we got individual reading there. Remember that silent independent reading, usually a bad word, not all the time, but usually a bad word. So let's just, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I am going to eliminate it for now because I like A better. D, introduce new material and lecture followed immediately by questioning session on the material. So lecture is not the best word here. Now, do we do lectures? Yes, I'm doing a lecture right now. I love a lecture. I'm an auditory learner. I love to sit back and listen and take notes, but not everybody loves that. I think that there should be a mixture. So what we want to do is we want to keep it, but I'm not in love with it. All right, now let's read the question. Classroom management research findings suggest that, okay, so keyword here, classroom management. That's going to lead me to this, because what are we talking about with classroom management? We're talking about routines. We're talking about making sure the kids aren't all over the place and yelling and screaming and all that stuff, right? Transition time should be nice and regimented. So it says research findings suggest that one of the most effective ways to maximize the amount of elementary school children spend on academic activities is for the teacher to do which of the following. So here's the key with classroom management. And this goes for high school too, you guys, and this goes for middle school. We don't want to reduce academic time by getting into it with a student. Okay, we want to make sure that academic time is the most time we spend. Dealing with kids talking in the back of the room and all this, breaking instruction to say, hey, Johnny, stop that. Hey, you over there, don't do that. That is not productive, not just for you as a teacher, but for the students who are trying to follow along. You break instruction and you start yelling at kids in the classroom. Your kids who are not doing anything wrong, they're like, I'm finally getting into this thing. And now it's, the instruction is broken. So always, A is going to be the best answer here. Always plan for, those are procedures. And I did this in high school as a high school science teacher. We went through procedures for our labs over and over and over again before we ever did a lab. I was like, okay, kids, let's do it. Come into the room. What do? Put your book bags down, go back to the back lab, get your protective eye gear, get everything ready to go. And then what we would do, we'd put it all away. And then the next day we would do it again. We did it for a week before we did an actual lab, because if you practice it for a week, when it's time for lab time, I'm not wasting any time talking to him about, hey, stop that. Don't poke him with the tweezers. Hey, don't put that down. Your Bunsen burner is not for burning your lab partner. We don't want that to happen. Your Bunsen burner is not for that. We don't want that to happen. So right here, plan for, teach, enforce routines. Great. And remember, we eliminated 2 off the bat, and the reason why D, I saw somebody chose D in the chat. I like questioning session. This is great because questioning is part of higher order thinking. But if I go into the question and read the question, we've got a classroom management situation here. And so that's why A is going to be the best answer. Again, all I did is use good words, bad words, and I narrowed it down. All right, let's go with a high school or middle school. I'm going to give you a second to do this. One more thing. If you're using the Q&A, I can't see it when I'm sharing the screen. So please use the chat. Then I can see it when I'm sharing screen. Otherwise, I have to stop sharing in order to see the Q&A. So if you have questions for me, throw it in the chat. Thanks. So start here first. Start with the answer choices. You may or may not be able to eliminate, and then go up into the question. Let's see what you guys got going on here. What do you think? This is a ELL question. And let me know what you think. I love wait time when teaching. It's just hard to do a lot of wait time when we're live. Dead air. All right, we've got C, we've got A. This one's hard with ELLs because we want to modify instruction here. All right, so let's take a look at the answer choice. We've got a couple things coming in. You're between C and A. I like it. I like it. All right, it gives me something to talk about here. You're between C and A. Great. Okay, here we go. So first off, I'm going to go into my questions here, and I'm going to look at my answer choices. So let's look at A. Allow the ELLs to submit a series of pictures as a basis for explaining their directions. Well, I like pictures when talking about ELLs. It depends on what level they're on, but pictures allow ELLs to kind of communicate. So I'm going to keep A. Let's look at B. Have the ELLs use bilingual dictionaries when writing their directions. Okay, bilingual dictionaries are very good tools for your ELL students. So I suggest having them in your classroom. But as far as an instructional practice, I'm going to cross it off. And just like regular dictionaries, they're usually not the right answer. It depends. But for this, I'm going to eliminate it just to make my life easier. C, ask the ELLs to explain their directions orally rather than submit them in writing. I like C as well, because orally, is an accommodation for ELL. So I've got A and C, and most of you chose either A and C. Let's go with D. Reduce the number of directions that ELLs. Here's something about this, and this goes for ELLs and non-ELL students, okay? Making things easier, reducing the number of directions, reducing the number of problems is not accommodating. It is not scaffolding. It's just lowering the expectation. And we never want to lower the expectation, okay? So I'm going to eliminate D all the time. You see anything like this, even if it's not related to ELLs, get rid of it. It's usually not the answer. Now, this is great for your pre-K and elementary ed teachers as well. This is a middle and high school question. It does come from the ETS companion, study companion. Let's take a look at the question. Now, here's another trick I like to do. Rather than start up here, let's go to the question stem to most appropriately modify the assignment for beginning level ELLs. The teacher should. Now, beginning is the key word here because beginners use pictures rather than orally. Now, the orally one is good, but that's usually for intermediate or like beyond emergent. So pictures, because they can point to pictures and say, oh yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean right there. So I'm going to eliminate C, go with A just based on the stem. Let me read the whole question just to check. The teacher instructs the students to use the feedback from their lab partners to improve and finalize their directions. Put the directions in a formatted word process document and hand in the document as a class. Ooh, that's going to be hard for ELLs. So we definitely need an accommodation there for kids who don't speak the language yet. And pictures, because they're beginning level usually goes with pictures for ELLs. So I'm going to go with A there. Very good, guys. All right, let's move on to another big piece of the instructional process for the PLT, all grade levels. So you are going to get lots of questions about objectives, okay? So objectives have a lot to do with learning domains. Bloom's taxonomy is all over this test, Accommodations, which we saw in the previous questions, modifications, accommodations, targeted interventions and remediation. Okay, this is also differentiated instruction. That's what happens here. And then we mentioned this in our good words list, thematic and interdisciplinary. So using lots of different content areas to work into your instruction for, English or science or whatever. Okay. All right, let's take a look. I want to talk to you guys about Bloom's here really quickly. Now, this is a modified Bloom's taxonomy pyramid. Okay. And I use this when I teach teachers. Don't get too wrapped up in, does apply go here? Does evaluate go here? It doesn't matter, okay? There's some things I want you to understand about this Bloom's taxonomy pyramid, all right? First of all, at the bottom are these bottom skills here. Understand, identify, memorize, and remember. Those are low-level skills. They're still necessary. If you're just starting a lesson on like the DNA molecule, you can't be up here at apply because the kids have no idea what's going on. You got to start here by memorizing certain aspects, understanding certain aspects of it. You can't jump to the top of the pyramid without supporting those skills at the bottom. So it's not that one is more important than the other. It's just that they're used in different contexts. Now, we do want to constantly be pushing the kids up to the top of this pyramid. This is the goal, right? Critical thinking, higher order thinking, constantly push, right? And this will also be referred to as the cognitive process. So the way I like to think of it is this way. Level 1, which is the bottom of the pyramid, are going to be these level 1 skills: understand, identify, remember, and memorize. Level 2, a little bit higher level cognitive thinking, is going to be compare and contrast, categorize. You kind of have to use 2 processes of your brain in order to do this. And then finally, the top level, the high level, the critical thinking part is going to be apply, create, analyze, evaluate. Also, questioning. Generating your own questions will certainly help you become a critical thinker. So that's really, really important. And I recommend that for all teachers taking this test. Look at some of the specs and some of the things covered on this test and make up your own questions. That is really high level and it really helps you understand the concepts of this test. So Don't say, hey, on your pyramid, you have create, here, but on Bloom's, I think it's like down here or something. It doesn't matter. This right here is the critical thinking piece. It's the higher order piece. This right here is the mid-level. And this right here is the bottom level, the low level thinking. All of them are important. They build on each other, and your objectives in the classroom should reflect these. It should be like, maybe I'm starting the lesson and maybe it's students will understand the components of the DNA molecule. Okay. And they will identify the nitrogen bases or something like that. Then maybe they can categorize, oh God, I'm going on the fly here. They can categorize adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. Maybe they connect them together and know which ones go with which. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's okay. Don't worry about it. And then maybe for the apply, maybe they say, okay, students will relate the structure of the DNA molecule to its function and analyze its importance in cell division. That's a high level, right? But remember, even if I say to kids, it may sound complex to you. Identify the 4 nitrogen bases of the DNA molecule. Well, if you don't know DNA, you're like, that sounds crazy hard, but it's just identify. It's just rattling it off. Adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. That's a memorization situation. So even though it's a complex concept, DNA and heredity and genetics, that skill is still memorize or identify. So just remember that when you're answering questions here. Now let's see it in an actual question. So this is a pre-K3 elementary one for this particular part. So I want you to take a look. Remember, I want you to look at right away. This jumps out to me. I know I always say, start with the answer choices, but Bloom's taxonomy is like right there. So we want to be thinking of that. And I can see this word application, which is what? That's at that top level of the pyramid. So go ahead and look at the answer choices, see if you can eliminate bad words. If you can't, go back to the question and tell me in the chat or in the discussion what you think the right answer is. All right, you guys are coming in with B's, very good. All right, couple of things I want to talk to you about in terms of B here. This word here, real life situations. This is also called relevant instruction and making sure that you are, applying what we know to real life situations. This is very, very, very important in instruction. So just the fact that I see real life in there, I'm gonna love this answer choice. It's gonna be on my love list, okay? So let me go with A, the ability to translate information into one's own words to show understanding. Well, where is understanding? That's down here, right? So I'm gonna take it out because, oops, where am I? Sorry about that. I have this application here that stood out to me. So I'm going to cross it off. C, the ability to break down information into parts to see how parts relate to the whole. C is okay. C is okay. Breaking them down and the relate word is good. I'm not in love with it, but I don't hate it. I love B more. Let's go to D. The ability to recognize and recall. Recognize and recall is here. Memorization. Recall is rote memory, low-level skills. Still important, especially for math, anything, vocab, things like that. Very important skill. Memorization is an important skill in education for sure, but we always want to push them to that higher level. Let's go back to the question. According to Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives, which of the following best describes application as a level of understanding? Well, taking it to the real life situations, that's the application. Taking what you're learning in your really difficult science class, or for pre-K3, maybe it's something abstract, taking the abstract and bringing it into the real world. That's higher order thinking. That's the application. Therefore, B is going to be the correct answer there. Very good, guys. Let's try. All right. I love this question. because most people freak out when they see this question. Here's your middle and high school question. It's attached to a huge scenario here. What most people do is they start here. They read the whole thing all the way down. Then they get to the question and it's like, oh my God. Then they get to the answer choices. Remember what I said, start here. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to take a look at this. Start there, eliminate bad words, grab what you think is good words, then go here. Go here. Before you get all messed up in the scenario, I'm going to give you a couple minutes. Go into the chat and let me know what you think. I'm going to check all my stuff. If you're answering in the Q&A, I can't see it. So, or if you're asking me questions in the Q&A, I can't see it. So definitely put it in the chat for me if it's a pending question. Looks like you guys got the stuff coming in. Good. Notice that you guys are like, boom, boom, boom. A. A is the answer. Very good. I didn't even have to get it bogged down in this thing. I didn't even have to read this thing. This happens all the time. I study tests for a living. I'm like a testing nerd. I cannot tell you how many times on every test, there's this giant scenario they want you to read, and you don't even have to read it. Let's go to the answer choices here. First of all, it says, the student showed evidence. I like the word evidence of creative and interpreting the directions. Okay. The student carried out instructions exactly as specified. This is kind of a bad word situation here because exactly is what we call strong language in testing. And it's typically not the right answer, just so you know. If you have things like only, always, never, exactly, be careful. I'm not saying it's never the answer, but a lot of times it is not the answer because it's called strong language. You want to stay away from that. So I'm going to eliminate B. C, the student did not follow directions and will receive a low grade. What did I say about negative stuff? Get rid of it. Take it out. No negativity on this test or in life. And D, the student must redo the assignment and follow directions most closely. Redo the assignment? No. No. A is the best answer here. Now, let me just look at the question stem. Which of the following states the most appropriate evaluation the teacher could make? I still don't know yet. Let me read the whole question. I don't want you to just, look, I've done experiments where I've taken these tests and never read the question and just went on the answer choices and I've passed, just so you know, but I do not want you to do that because this is about your career. So don't do that, but definitely, you know, use our methods here. Let's go into the question. Don't do this yet. Let's just go in here. The teacher instructs the students to use the feedback from their lab partners to improve and finalize their directions, put the directions in a formatted word process document and hand in the document. When the students hand in the assignment, the teacher sees that one of the students has used a series of diagrams and pictures as a basis of her directions. Well, you're not gonna penalize her. So C and D are out, and the student showed evidence. The diagrams are evidence. So this kid just did it in a different way. That's why A is your correct answer. Notice I did not have to I don't have to waste 18 minutes on this whole thing here. Moving on. I went here, chose my good words, eliminated my bad words, went to the question stem, figured out what they're asking me, grabbed it, and moving on to the next question. Good job, guys. All right. Oops. Let me go here. All right. The next piece of the multiple choice is going to be learning preferences, lecture, cooperative learning. These are all instructional methods here. Interactive, memory, drill, and practice. Now, all of these are important. We always want to take a look at learning preferences. These are often called your multiple intelligences. If you're an auditory learner, a visual learner, a read-write learner, those types of things. Like I'm an auditory learner. I love podcasts. I love long lectures. I'm a nerd when it comes to that, but other kids are not. Other kids get lost in the auditory learning. So they're more social. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, like they really thrive. Like my daughter thrives in cooperative learning. She loves collaborative processes. She loves solving complex problems in groups. That's her thing. listening to a lecture for an hour is not her thing at all. So she likes cooperative learning. Some kids hate cooperative learning because they don't want to work together. Now, you got to do a little bit of everything in the classroom, but just remember that I taught college for a while and I was really trying to incorporate cooperative learning, and my students hated it at first because they were so used to cooperative learning where one kid did all the work and all the other kids just kind of hung out to the side and put their names on the paper. That's not cooperative learning. That is unproductive group work. So cooperative learning is a little bit different. So we got to make sure we do it right when we do it. Independent problem solving. It's not necessarily independent reading, right? And I believe in independent reading. I use it a lot. But when we're talking about struggling learners, we don't want to use it. But independent problem solving has to do with the I do, you do, we do method, right? I do as the teacher, I show you in a lecture format or explicitly. Then, oops, I did it backwards. I do, we do, you do. Sorry about that. We do is we do it together. After I show you, I model it as the teacher, I show it to you. And then you do, the student does it by him or herself. That's the independent problem solving, the gradual release method. So independent problem solving is important, but it could also be done in cooperative learning. Then we have interactive, could be virtually, kids have to like touch things or do something experiential. And then we have memory, drill, and practice, sight words, math drills. Very important parts, should not be the only part of your instruction, but definitely part of the instructional process. So let's go to a question now. Let me zoom this in. All right. Look at the answer choices first. Try to get the right answer. Again, this is from ETS Study Companion. Want to make sure I make that clear. And decide which one you think is correct. And I'll check the chat and see what you guys think. This is a hard one because there are two areas of good words. I like this question because it'll bring up a lot of things. All right, we got some differences. I love it when not everybody answers the same, because then this brings in the discussion, right? This brings in the discussion. So we got different answers everywhere and even question marks. Awesome. All right, let's talk about it, guys. First of all, let's take a look and see if we can find any bad words and eliminate anything here. So we have reducing student stigmatization by teaching the same curriculum. That's not differentiated instruction. I mean, we do need to teach the same curriculum, but it kind of gives off a like standardization situation here. I'm going to eliminate it for now, unless the question leads me to something different. B, providing opportunities for more able students to assist less able peers in learning. All right. A lot of people like to pick this answer here because of that peer assist, but be careful with peer assists because students are struggling. The kids should not be in charge of helping them. It's really your job as a teacher. I'm not saying that it's never the answer, but I'm not going to pick it as my good answer just yet, because if these kids need help, I don't want to put it on students who are higher level. I'm going to not eliminate it, but it's not my favorite. C, provide student specific, that's differentiated instruction in areas where students struggle. I like it. D, maintaining high level of expectations for all students. That's on my good words list. All right, so it's between C and D. Let's read the question. Which of the following characteristics is considered a strength of flexible ability grouping? This is going to lead me to C, because ability has to do with all different levels, and it meets that piece of the struggling students. So definitely A and B are out now based on the question. Now I'm down to C and D. Well, Dr. Jasper said high level expectations for all students are on the good words list. Yes, it is on the good words list, but I also want you to pay attention to the question. And in this case, it leads you to ability. And in this case, C has that student specific. And if we're talking about flexible grouping, I can put students who are struggling with like phonics over here and have specific instructions for those kids over here. And I can have students who are struggling with comprehension over here or fluency and have specific instruction here. And I can have students who are high flying and they're getting it all. And I've got specific instructions for them to do more complex tasks. That's really what flexible grouping is about. So C is going to be the best answer there. So definitely take out the bad ones and then go into the question and see, okay, C is a better fit here. D has the good words, but C is a better fit. All right. So let's take a look at another one for high school. Take a look at this and enter it in the chat what you think the answer is. We've got answers coming in. All right, we got B. Let's see. Okay. B, C, C. Good, guys. Okay, we got a lot of different answers again. Awesome. I love that. All right, let's go over it. First of all, let's start with the answer choices. The teacher focuses on individualized instruction, although small groups are used more for reading than for mathematics. Not in love with it. I'm going to take it off. The teacher is careful to prepare students' seat work so they have opportunities to complete tasks. I'm going to go with bad words here because seat work is kind of like that individualized homework kind of thing. I'm not in love with it. Let's keep going. The teacher focuses on whole group discussions and uses various, this is a good word, various questioning, explaining, and probing techniques. Remember, having a varied type of instruction here is really important. And so this looks like a good word answer to me. So let me I like C. Let's go with D. The teacher stops and reteaches material whenever necessary for students who do not understand the material. All right. This is kind of the opposite of differentiated instruction, because if you're stopping and reteaching in the middle of whole group, you're not being cognizant of the students who do understand it. Right? So if I stop every time and reteach something and you're one of my students who has it, you're like, oh, here we go again. She's going to teach it 8 times. I already got it. Let's move on. So D is kind of the opposite. It is certainly, it's not a bad thing to stop and reteach every once in a while, for sure. But whenever necessary, like that means if one kid doesn't get it, you're going to stop. No, what you should do is keep going and then figure out by formatively assessing your students, who got it, who didn't. Let me go to small group for those kids who didn't get it and let the other kids move on to other activities. That's differentiation. All right, let's read the question. Which of the following instructional strategies is most commonly observed in middle grade classes in which core subjects are integrated into the curriculum? So this is I'm recording, so I want to make sure I get it all here. We've got here core subjects integrated into the curriculum. That is a interdisciplinary cross-curricular question. So C is the best answer there because you're using a various questioning, explaining, and probing. That goes into the integrated curriculum because you're using various content areas, science, social science, math, and all of that. So you're going to need a variety of instructional approaches. A is not going to be great there because you're focusing on individualized instruction. How are you going to do that with integrated curriculum? It really kind of needs to be almost like a whole group situation here. Go up here. Seat work, absolutely not for this. Nope. C is best. D is okay, but D is not the best answer here, leaving C. So notice how eliminating first and then going into the question is the best way to do it here. All right. Now we're going to get into the constructed responses. But before I do, I just want to stop sharing for a moment. Go to my chat. Some people were in the Q&A. Looks like you guys were answering in the Q&A. I can see that now. Thank you so much for participating. Unfortunately, when I'm sharing screen, I can't see the Q&A, but I can see the chat. So put anything in there. Let me go into the chat here. Somebody asked in the chat, is this going to be recorded? Yeah, everything I do is recorded. You're going to get it in an email. And then somebody else asked, where will you send the email? I have your email. If you're on Zoom right now and you are in my Zoom call and you got the handouts, I have your email. I'm going to send you everything. So don't worry about that. We'll take a couple of hours so this video populates. All right. So now if we don't have any more questions with the multiple choice, hopefully that helps you. I am telling you, I analyze tests for a living. These methods work on any multiple choice test that is scenario based. Don't get bogged down with these big, long, lengthy scenarios. Go straight to the answer choices and the question stem. That little piece at the end of the question that says, what should the teacher do to maximize learning for struggling learners or whatever it is? Forget that huge scenario. There are clues in the huge scenario. So I don't say abandon it totally, but don't start from the top and go all the way down to the bottom because you're going to lose it. You're not going to get the best understanding there. It's called backwards design. It's called good old fashioned test taking strategies. Teach your students to do this too on their tests. Show these strategies to your students. They don't necessarily have scenarios, but have them think like test makers, not test takers. That's my biggest thing. Think like a test maker, not like a test taker. It's really, really, really important. And because tests are a part of kids' lives now too. You're going to have to show them how to be strategic. It's part of life. I hate that. I wish we didn't have to do this, but we do. And so you can take these into your classroom for sure. All right. All right. So let's go through the constructed response. So take out your handout. If you don't have your handout, don't worry. It's all good. I'm going to show you the handout here so you'll be able to see it. All right. Notice that I have a constructed response here, a big old scenario. I got objectives. I've got an observation here. You know, there's a lot going on here. And then I have question 1 and question 2. And in there, I have these 2 bullets. You have to write just a short paragraph that addresses these 2 bullets. That's all. No more, no less. Okay. And you have an opportunity to get 2 points per question. Okay. So when I told you that you want to shoot for a 5 out of 8, I factored in that you might only get 1 point for most of the questions. But if you can do what I'm showing you to do here, you can easily get 2 points per question. Remember, there are 8 total points. There are 4 total questions, but 8 total points, meaning each question is worth 2. Notice 2 bullets for each question, 2 points. So there are 8 possible points in the constructed response up for grabs. Okay. So if you have any questions about that, let me know in the chat. Let me check real quick. Yes, everything will be handed out. Just checking the chat here. So don't worry. All of it is emailed out. Everything. Don't worry. Okay. All right, here we go. So I'm going to tell you to do the same thing I told you to do in multiple choice for your constructed response. What do people do? What's your first thing to do? You start up here, Ms. Rhodes, yada, yada, going all the way down, looking in here, going through the bullets, looking at this, getting wrapped up in here, losing all your cognitive space. You're tired. It's the end of the test. And you just went through this whole thing. No, no, no. Start here. What is my task? Always start with the task. Same goes for kids. Don't get bogged down in this huge scenario. You only have one thing you got to do here. So let's take a look. In the objectives, Ms. Rhodes wanted students to identify and discuss different features of Earth. Identify 2 modifications she can make to the lesson to meet these objectives and explain how each modification can help improve meeting the objective. So this is how they're structured. They'll tell you to say, identify 2 things the person can do. And then it'll say, how will this help students? That's how they do it. Okay. So, and it's the same here. Look here. Identify 2 areas of professional learning. And for each area of professional learning, say how it'll help her achieve her goal. All right. So basically, here's the nutshell of the scenario. I do not want to read it to you. And if you already got the handouts, you probably already read it. If not, you can read it later. But basically, you got a new teacher here. These are her objectives. So students will work in groups to use clay to make models of Earth. Students will discuss different features of the Earth. Students will identify the different features of Earth. So these are all kind of lower level objectives, which is fine. But we have, identify the features, and we have discuss different features. So we're looking at different features of the Earth, and they're going to use clay to do it. And up here, it says that she basically wants to make cooperative learning a regular part of her classroom instruction here. All right. So that's important. She wants to do that. And then there's some observations by the peer teacher. And all the observations is a scenario of what's going on. And basically, surprise, surprise, this is what happens. She doesn't give explicit instructions. The kids get in their group, they grab the clay, they mush it all together. It's a hot mess. We've all been there 100 times. So I'm not knocking Ms. Rhodes here. I've been in this situation 100 times, but it's a cluster. Okay. So basically, what can she do to modify 2 modifications in the lesson and explain how they work? And here's how I do it. I'm going to pull up a paragraph. And again, you're going to get this. So don't worry. And this is going to be my constructed response for primary. All right. During Ms. Rhodes' lessons, students are more concerned with playing with the clay than meeting the objective. That's something I observed in that scenario there. 2 modifications Ms. Rhodes can make to ensure students are meeting the objectives is to discuss the objectives before the lesson. Here's the second one, and provide instructions, explicit instruction for the lesson. Notice that I have the 2 things. Hang on, Ms. Rhodes can make is 2. Number 1, discuss the objectives. There's number 1, and provide explicit instructions. Number 2. You can even say, you can get rid of this here. You could possibly not even do this and just say 2 modifications Ms. Rhodes can make. You do not have to do like an intro. Don't fluff it up. Get right to what you're trying to do. It's a short answer. You're not writing a dissertation here. Okay. I just set it up for you guys here so you knew like what I was talking about, but you could start straight with that 2 modifications. Now that's the first part. Let me bring this over to here. All right, now that's the first part. I identified 2 modifications. Now I want to explain how each modification can help improve. That's the next part. Discussing the objectives helps to set the purpose for learning. Explicit instruction helps students to understand what is expected of them. Boom, done. 2 points for sure. Did not have to take 18 hours to do that. I did the 2 things, and then I said how each thing helps to improve the instruction. Done. Now let's go to the other one. In the introduction of the scenario, it mentions that Ms. Rhodes wants to make cooperative learning a part of her integral process. Like she wants to use cooperative learning a lot. Well, obviously, if the kids are like, it's not a great job the first time around. Kids are squishing the clay together. They're poking each other. They're not following directions, right? And you can say here that she's frustrated a lot of times. And people say, well, these kids just don't understand. These kids just don't know how to act. These kids just don't know what they're doing. Well, it's probably a little bit of the teacher not explaining things in an explicit manner, not setting up those procedures, not, just setting the kids up for success. You got to take an inward eye, reflective practice. If all the kids are acting like jerks, they're probably jerks a little bit, but you are the person who is supposed to take control and help them to be better. So you'll get better. Don't worry. I've cried in my car many a days after a lesson that I thought was going to be amazing, and it turned out to be terrible, but you'll get it. So this is a new teacher. So it's going to be a cluster when you start out. So it says, identify 2 areas of professional learning Ms. Rhodes can seek out. So what they're doing here in this part, they're trying to get you to What can she do to help her with the cooperative learning piece? Now, remember, I want you to read this scenario. I don't want you to cut any corners here. I want you to read it, but I want you to read the questions first. Okay. So you set the purpose. So identify 2 areas of professional learning that she can take to achieve her goal of making cooperative learning part of her integral practice. And for each area, identify what can help them achieve, what can help her achieve that. No problem. Let's go back to my short answer here. Here we go. 2 areas of professional learning Ms. Rhodes should consider taking are how to organize cooperative learning to meet objectives and how to structure cooperative learning groups so students are accountable for their learning. So I have organize and structure are kind of the same thing, but I've got one is going to meet objectives and the other one is going to hold students accountable, which will reduce that mushing the clay together and not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Now, is there a professional development session ready for this kind of thing? I don't know, perhaps, but make it up. It doesn't matter. Make up a professional learning opportunity. All right. Now I got to go into the 2 ways that will help. How to create groups based on an objective will help Ms. Rhodes organize groups so it is not just playtime. Remember, we're trying to learn. It's not just play with clay time, but rather to meet the learning goals. And then professional learning focused on structuring groups will help to keep students accountable for their learning and focused during the lesson. Boom, 2 points, done. Now, I have a doctorate in education, so these are easy for me. You are just starting out, and someday you might have a doctorate in education and you might become an assistant principal and all of that. Or you might get your own education company like I have here. But for now, you're just beginning. So it's okay to just be a beginner. So just go with 2 things and just apply those to it. Just do the task. That's it. Remember, you can get a D on this section and still pass the exam. All right, now let's go to my secondary, you guys. I did a secondary one here for my middle and high school, but it's going to be good for you guys as well. So again, I'm going to start here at, I want to highlight this. Hang on. It's very touchy. Okay. There we go. All right. So let's go with question 1. In the rubric, category 2, teachers deliver instruction aligned to rigorous learning objective is the place where Ms. Sumner scored ineffective. So let's go up to the rubric. Here it is. And I can see that this area here, yeah, the teacher got a 1. All right. Now I haven't read the thing yet, but I'm just kind of going around looking at my question. Identify 2 modifications Mr. Sumner can make to his lesson to increase his effectiveness in category 2. So category 2 is teacher delivers instruction aligned to a rigorous learning objective. Okay. And then explain how each modification can help improve. So again, we have this thing. Oops, sorry about that, y'all. We have this thing that we want him to achieve. He scored low on. So what 2 modifications can he make and how will that help improve? And this is the theme on almost all the constructed responses. So don't worry about that. And then we have question 2. In the observation feedback, which is right here. So I'm going to highlight that. I only get 1 color to highlight in PDF, unfortunately. Otherwise it would be purple and green and all that. But observation notes, in the observation feedback, the principal mentions that the student engagement is low and that there are no learning objectives driving instruction. Identify 2 changes this teacher can make to address the feedback, and for each change, identify how it will help. Okay, so then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to read this thing. Now I'm going to sum it up for you real quick. Basically, we got Mr. Sumner is a social science teacher, and here are his lesson plans. Read the chapter, answer chapter questions. Read the chapter, answer chapter questions. Read the chapter, answer chapter questions. No, this is already starting to put a red flag up that we got issues here in terms of, you know, how to engage students. Okay. Then you got a test. Then he does it again. Chapter 5 questions, chapter 5, lesson 2 questions, then a test on chapter 5. Oh my God, just awful. This happens a lot in social science classes. If you're a social science teacher, please don't do this. Textbook is an awesome resource, but should not be the main resource for your instruction. Then we have Monday, 40-minute movie watching and note-taking. If you really want to make your principal crazy, show a movie for 40 minutes. and not have any discussion. Movies are good for social science, but they should be paused periodically and discussion or activity should take place. Too often, because I was an assistant principal and I did classroom observations, too often I would walk into social studies classrooms and there'd be like a movie for like an hour and a half. I remember The Story of Us came out on the History Channel and every single social science teacher was just showing the story of us. That was their lesson plan. No, no, no. So this is a red flag here. 40 minutes of movie and note taking. Ugh. Read the textbook and complete practice questions. No. Group work. Okay. But group work, remember what I said about group work. And then makeup day. No. Debate, I like it. Debate is more interactive, but there are all kinds of red flags going on here for me as an instructional leader and as a principal, okay? Just so you know. All right, so let's go in one more time. Let's look at the person scored low here. The principal gave them a score of a 1 in here, and here are the notes. Students are compliant, however, they're not engaged. Remember, compliance and engagement are two different things. And then it says there are no objectives driving instruction, just the textbook is driving an instruction here. No, no, no. All right, and then let's go in and see what 2 modifications can Mr. Sumner make to meet this, to maybe get a better score here on teacher delivers instruction aligned to a rigorous objective, and then how can that help to improve meeting the objective? All right, so let's go over here. 2 modifications Mr. Sumner can make to his lessons to increase effectiveness in category 2 is to use rigorous objectives rather than the textbook to plan instruction and to change up activities to include more variety in instructional methods. All right, so 1, actually use objectives. There were no objectives used. And 2, change up. 2 is right here. Change up the activities. It's like textbook questions, textbooks, questions. No. For example, rather than just using the chapters and questions at the end of the chapters in the textbook as activities, use Bloom's taxonomy to drive instruction. Ooh. In addition, changing up the activities will help students to engage in critical thinking rather than just completing the same task over and over again. So right there, I gave you 2 things and how those will move him towards a better score in category 2 on the rubric, and how it will help students become better. Perfect. I would probably get a 2 on that. If I got a 1, it's okay because I can get a D on this section. All right, category or question number 2. In the observation feedback, the principal mentions that the student engagement is low and that there are no learning objectives driving the instruction. Identify 2 changes the teacher can do to address his feedback. For each change, identify how it might improve instruction. All right, so let me go here. And I have 2 things already here. Number 1, the first thing Mr. Sumner can do is to display and discuss objectives before the lesson. There are no objectives displayed according to the principal. Those should be on the board, and not just on the board, you guys. Don't just write them on the board. Talk to your kids about them. What are we responsible for learning today? We are going to relate the tensions during right before the Civil War to how it developed into the Civil War. We are going to understand the Union versus the Confederacy. Okay, that's what we're responsible for today. Let's get into the learning, and then periodically go back to the objective. Hey guys, this activity we just did hits that first learning objective for today. Good job. Refer to the objectives. They're not just supposed to go in your lesson plans. They're supposed to be a part of the lesson, all right? So that's the first thing. And then I say, this will help students understand what they are responsible for. So notice I said, the first thing he should do is this, and this will help the students do that. So I basically hit both of those bullets in the first one. And then I said, the second activity, or the second thing Mr. Sumner can do is to make group work cooperative learning by including expectations, roles, and responsibilities. This will help students go from compliance to being involved in the learning. There it is. Definitely a 2 there. And it's like broken up. Basically how I did it was I went, oops, that was weird. I said, I did one thing he could do, and then I did how that would change the situation. And I did the other thing he would do and how that would support the situation. So I kind of broke it up that way. All right. Now let me stop sharing That brings us to the end of the webinar here. I had so much fun being here with you guys. I'm so glad to see so many people from different states. We're trying to get into other states. So tell your friends, share our resources, and let everybody know we are here to help teachers. I am obsessed with professional development for teachers and how to help teachers get through the certification process. So I just want to be here for you guys and help you out. So let us know if you have any questions. You can respond to the email you get today. Remember, it is going to take a minute to get the email. It takes a while for this video to get like download and do all this stuff. So just give me till the end of the day today. If you don't get it by tomorrow morning, shoot me an email, but wait until the end of the day today, because I'm going to go have a little water and float in my pool for a few minutes after this. So thank you guys so much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Share with your friends and have an awesome weekend.